June Thompson Morris. Am I correct?
That's correct.
And I got the former mayor, Dorothy Thomson. How many years were you mayor?
I was mayor from 85 to 87, and 16 years old told on the commission.
Wow. So we're going to talk about a great show coming at Actors Playhouse. Am I correct? Greeting from Paradise.
Greetings from Paradise.
It's pretty exciting. You are the producer?
I'm the writer.
The writer of
yeah, I'm the playwright.
Wow. Are you, I just want to, are you going to be in it?
No, I will not be in it. Absolutely not.
All right, let's talk
I
about.
don't want to ruin it.
No. How many years have you been in Coral Gables? Your whole life to speak of. A couple years away.
Well, I was born and raised in Coral Gables. I was born at Doctors Hospital. I went to all the public schools. I went to West Lab.
Okay, hold on. Who's your favorite teacher at West Lab?
Oh, gosh.
Don't look at
Mrs. Ketchum. I remember Mrs. Ketchum.
Linda? Linda Ketchum?
Is it Linda Ketchum?
I think it was.
You know Linda Ketchum?
Go ahead. Next, middle school.
Don't ask me about teachers. I wasn't that great of a student, so I can't remember.
What high school did you go to then?
Coral Gables High School.
Okay, but who was your favorite favorite person at the
Well,
school?
we had Mr. Feldman. He was the drama teacher. I was in drama.
Wow.
So, yeah, Mr. Feldman was pretty popular.
Okay,
guy.
in middle school, where'd you go?
To Ponce. And I also went to Carver for a year.
Do you have any favorite teachers there?
Can't remember any of them. Do you remember any of my teachers?
Wait, she's not supposed to be a crutch. Come on. You know what?
Well, she would know the teachers.
Okay, so how did you decide to write this play?
Well, when I was a little girl, I remember hearing the story first from my grandmother. You know, I can remember actually spending the weekend with my grandparents one particular weekend when she told me the story of how when she was 19 years old, she came down on Henry Flagler's Florida East Coast Railroad to meet up with a man that she had met at a party back in Indianapolis. And
Wait, your mom's side? Your mom's side?
no, it's my father's side of the family.
Okay.
Yeah, her name is Lucy Mae Barnes.
And your father served in the military? Am I correct?
Yes.
What branch?
He was in the Army.
Okay.
I mean,
He was very-
his
he was-
whole life.
He was very
career.
proud of it because when he
Yes,
was around,
he was a colonel.
Yes.
A colonel in the Army. He was an Army pilot too. So, and it was during the Korean War era. That's my father.
Right.
So my grandfather's Robert Thompson, and he was the one who lured my grandmother down to meet up with him as a single 19-year-old woman in the mid-1900s when that was just scandalous. And her mother said that if he didn't marry her straight away, she had to go right back home, you know, on the next train. And so he did. Okay. This is what we're going to do. This is my father.
You're good right there.
That's right. John Thompson.
John Jack.
John Jack. John Jack.
Okay, so how did you come up with this what's
Well,
it all about?
I was always intrigued with the story of the 1920s. And then as time went on, I became very interested in family genealogy. And so I started talking to my father about the history of our family as well. And during the pandemic, when the world was shut down, my husband, Alan Morris, was writing his own book called All In, How to Risk Everything for Everything That Matters. And so while he was busy writing, I thought, well, this is my opportunity as well to write down the story that's on my heart. And so I started in by researching, and I took a picture recently of me with all of the books, and maybe we can show that picture. But I read everything on the subject of early Miami history, and I looked back at old newspaper articles, and I verified my grandparents' story. And then I found out so much more about George Merrick and Carl Fisher and all the early developers of South Florida and the people who were there first. And I turned it into a screenplay, first of all. And then knowing that the city's centennial was coming up, there are some of the books that I've read. I read other books, too, that you can't find in print anymore. There's one by...
How long did it take you to read that? I haven't read that many books in my whole life.
I read those books. Probably took a year because I was also taking notes on the books and, cross-referencing the books. And there are lots of fantastic books that are no longer in print that you can find in libraries like FIU's Library and History Miami. Jane Fisher wrote a book called Fabulous Hoosier about Carl Fisher. There was a newspaper reporter there, Weigel. He wrote Weigel Whoops It Up. He wrote about being a reporter back in the 1930s. Fascinating books about what was happening. And at that time in 1925, 2.5 million people moved into the state of Florida alone.
2.5.
2.5 million
What
people.
year is that?
1925.
Wow.
And that was because what was happening is there's the great Florida land boom was happening, where the real estate prices were going through the roof. And in 1924, our state legislature voted to get rid of income and inheritance taxes. And they did that purposefully to lure down wealthy people from the Northeast. And also,
What year was that?
1925. 1924, the state legislature voted to rescind any sort of taxes on income and inheritance.
That's 100 years ago.
Yeah.
And
that started the Great Florida Land Boom.
and
People said,
and it's still happening. People are still flocking for those rooms.
Exactly. And that's what's so fascinating, is that some of the things that were happening in 1925 are repeating themselves 100 years later. We've had a wave of people coming down from the Northeast because of the high taxes up there in New York and New Jersey. A lot of major companies have relocated for that very reason. So history is repeating itself. And there are other ways too. There are lots of parallels between 1925 and 2025 that I found fascinating.
So who's producing the show? Is it,
This is Actors Playhouse at Miracle Theater.
that's their
So yes, it's Barbara Stein and it's David Arisco. So a couple of years ago, I took the script to David Arisco, and he's the one who directs all of their productions.
their production.
Yeah, their productions. And he pulls no punches. If he thought it was terrible, he would tell me. And he said, well, I really like a lot that you have here. This is a really wonderful story. Let's work on it together. So we worked on it together for about 2 years. A lot of rewrites.
Wait, so how long this has been going on?
Well, since the pandemic, since 2020. Yeah. And so then he hired some.
Feels like an eternity ago. The COVID.
I know it does, doesn't it? But life is what happened prior to COVID and what's happened after COVID, right? It's one of those
Right.
seminal moments in history that we all know where we were when something happened and what we were doing during the pandemic. And Alan and I both were kind of holed up, kind of reading and watching movies and writing and using that time to do the things that we've always wanted to do but didn't have the time to do.
Wow. Okay, so let's start from the beginning of the play. Can you talk about the play?
Sure. So my grandparents' love story, it's a true love story.
That's your father's side or your mother's side?
My father's side of the family. So it's Robert Thomson.
Right.
My father's John Thomson. And then I'm June Thompson. That's my maiden name. But it starts with their story of my grandmother coming down on the railroad and not knowing whether the guy she's meeting up with, that she met at a party in Indianapolis, is actually going to honor her, or she's going to have to head right back home again. Well, they got married instantaneously, basically. And they went on to live a very adventurous life in South Florida, some of the early pioneers. But she arrived, he was down there closing land deals. You see, the Fisher family, Carl Fisher's family, comes from Greensburg, Indiana.
You want to put a picture?
Put up a picture of Carl Fisher. He is the man who turned a tangle of mangroves on a tiny spit of island into Miami Beach. He's the man, Mr. Miami Beach right there. And his family is originally from Greensburg. And my great-grandfather, Frank Thompson, was the mayor of Greensburg,
Indiana.
And so then the Fisher family and the Thompson family moved to Indianapolis. And my grandfather fought in World War I, and then he got his law degree, and he was inspired by the stories of South Florida, what was happening. So my grandfather went down, working for my great-grandfather with a bank consortium to close land deals. And so he was actually the third attorney to set up on Miami Beach. And that was his job. He was closing land deals for the bank, because banks were able to invest at that time in land and sell land and so forth. It was a different time. There were almost no rules regarding real estate. And, you know, the Binda boys that talk about the binder, the Binda boys that
Right.
came down from New York and New Jersey, these are usually these young, scrubby, kind of dirty kids and with no education. And they come, hey, mister, you want to buy a piece of property? Be a millionaire by tonight, you know, that kind of thing. And they didn't have real estate licenses. And they would sell the same property over and over again, 6 to 10 times in as many days, because Miami wasn't set up to handle the paperwork load,
Right.
and it was inundated, and so the price of land just escalated like any other sort of a wild buying spree that happens, like the tulips back in where is it? where the great tulip thing back in, Dutchland,
Right.
whatever.
Holland.
Holland. Thank you, Holland.
Well,
We're talking about Miami history, so switch over to Holland.
She went to Holland.
But it's when the tulips, people would have mad craze for tulips, and then all of a sudden there was a flood of tulips, and the price came crashing down.
Right.
And the same sort of thing happened in Florida.
All right. So the beginning is talking about your grandparents,
Yes.
and then how long? The play's 2 hours, hour and a half.
No. The play's about 80 minutes, and I'm going to put up a picture of my grandparents there. That's Lucy and Robert Thomson. So as I said, they're the backbone because she comes down and he marries her, and they go through this great Florida land boom, and then 1 year later is a land bust. And then in September of 1926 is the hurricane that completely wiped out the property and brought everything to a standstill. So in doing my research, starting with my grandparents' story, but then learning what I learned about Carl Fisher and Jane Fisher and George Merrick and Doc Dammers and William Jennings Bryan and all the people who were involved and everything back then.
We got a picture of
Let's show George Merrick. No, there's George Merrick. He's a handsome guy. He was 6 foot tall, blonde, and rugged.
Was that tall then?
That was tall then.
Yeah. I thought 5'7's tall for me.
But when he walked into a room, he took control of the room. He had that sort of charismatic personality, but he wasn't
Something like a guy named Alan Morris.
kind of like Alan. Kind of reminds me of Alan a little bit, but he was very dreamy and poetic.
Who, Alan
visionary,
or
George? And so to sell land, he actually hired a guy, Edward Doc Dammers, who had been working for Carl Fisher. And so there's Doc Dammers, and
I never knew that. This is interesting because there's bars all over the place. Doc Dammers. And I just thought it was like a make believe.
No.
Come on.
No.
Come on. You didn't know about Doc Dammers?
I didn't know what he did.
He's a very mysterious guy because no one really knows his history. But he was working for Carl Fisher, and some people say he's the greatest showman, or he's the greatest salesman, or he is a huckster. So people had different opinions of him, but he's the one he would say, he's told Carl, on the golf course, you need to get an elephant to carry the golf clubs. Or he would say...
And he did it.
Yeah, he did that. That was Doc Dammers' idea. You need to have these boat races. We need to have these special boats produced and do these boat races out in the bay. We need to have these...
These ideas were Doc Dammers.
Yeah, all
And
Doc
where's he from?
Dammers. Doc Dammers from New York, upstate New York. Yeah.
I think so.
Yeah, and but they had an falling out, Doc Dammers and Carl Fisher. You see, Doc Dammers was Jewish, and Carl Fisher had a lot of restrictions on Jewish people
On Miami Beach.
on Miami Beach. And so George Merrick said, we're not going to have those restrictions here in Coral Gables. So he went to work for George Merrick instead. And so he actually became the first mayor of Coral Gables. So hardly anyone knows that our very first mayor was Jewish at a difficult time.
Who?
Doc Dammers
Was the first mayor?
was the first mayor of Coral Gables.
Wow.
Yes.
It's interesting history.
Yeah.
By the way, Community Newspapers is coming out with a special section in March with the whole history. And I
good.
haven't read it yet.
Maybe I need to proofread it after listening to you today. I need to kind of.
I think I might have a job for you.
Yeah.
So he was the mayor for how many years?
3 years.
How many?
3.
Was it why 3? Is that just how it was?
That's just how it worked out. I don't know why it was 3.
Mayor, was he ever elected official?
He was. I don't know if he was elected, or maybe they appointed it in the very beginning. He was, but there's a whole history there that I'm not prepared to talk about because I don't know all the details.
Okay,
but he was thrown off the commission.
Yeah. Okay, but is all this, most of this in the play?
No, that's not in the play.
Okay.
No, the play is going to take you through that one wild year. We're going through the land boom, bust, and the hurricane. And so, and part of the research too was looking up all of the old film, and I couldn't believe the Wolfson Institute has such a treasure trove of video from that time, from land sales to the hurricane, the aftermath of the hurricane. I couldn't believe what I found. So we're going to have like an old newsreel type of announcement in the beginning, a video.
How
to
great
play,
is that?
to set that up. And then when the hurricane hits, we'll have something like that too. We're going to use a lot of multimedia.
Was it TVJ?
TVJ, yeah.
Was that the TV station back then?
Not in the 1920s.
No,
there was not TV back in the 1920s.
Just film.
But they were still doing the silent movies.
But it's pretty exciting because not everybody. People that have been in the Gables forever still don't know this history.
Right, and so what I noticed was that all the books that have been written about the history of Coral Gables and early Miami are academic books. They're nonfiction books. No one's ever done something where you actually bring the characters back to life. And so that's what I decided I wanted to do, that I wanted people to be able to meet George Merrick and Doc Dammers and see them feel it, what they went through, like creating this new place. And whenever I read a book and I saw a direct quote from one of these guys, I wrote it down. And as much as possible, I worked that into their dialogue, into this play. So they're speaking their own words.
Your favorite quote from George Merrick?
Oh, I don't think I
Or Doc Dammers, one of them. Do you have a favorite quote?
Well, Doc Dammers said that George Merrick is the finest man who ever drew the breath of life.
Wow.
Yeah, he said that. So
that's powerful.
I use that in the play. And George Merrick, at one point, someone called him a developer or something like that, and he was saying that he has this wonderful way of saying, it's not that I'm building buildings, I'm building dreams, I'm building, a better, an ideal of a way to live. And his thought was, which is pretty funny in this current age, is that if he created this City Beautiful, which was a movement back in the mid 1920s, there were a couple of City Beautifuls across the country, and he thought, if I build a place and it's my own piece of property, I can build whatever I want. If I build fountains and beautiful things for people to look at and beautiful lush trees and landscape, that people are going to be looking at the beauty and feeling better about themselves. And this is going to allow people to live in harmony with one another. There's going to be an end to all fighting, and neighbors, everyone's going to get along.
Well, what's amazing about George Merrick, why did he pick that area? City Miami was around. Why did he pick that area? Why did he make 57th Ave? In my head, I think, why did he make 57th the boundary? Why didn't he make 67th the boundary? Why, and then there's on the west side of 57th Avenue, there's big pillars. So people think that's Coral Gables because on the east side there's pillars, but on the west side there's pillars in certain areas over canals. And the history is just amazing.
The history is amazing and has to do with the Coral Gables plantation, the property that his father Solomon Merrick purchased to begin with. But you might want to show the picture. I don't know how much time we have, but
you get as much time as you want.
Oh, okay. So anyway, as I was saying, there's a picture of my grandparents posing in front of a fountain in Coral Gables. Yes, there it is. So this is so funny. That's Robert and Lucy as well there. And my mother handed over to me all the pictures of my grandparents, and I had them digitized, and some of them were on slides. And so I found this one slide of them posing. I went, oh my goodness, that's Coral Gables, and it's in that time range of 1925. And so I posted on Facebook, and I said, help me find where this fountain is, because there are a lot of fountains that kind of look like that, but I wanted the exact fountain. And so people took pictures of fountains and posted them and said, this is the fountain, this is the fountain. And do you see at our feet? Do you see how there's like coral rock and then there's a stucco? Right. So I went out and I matched that to find out the exact fountain.
How many fountains were there in Coral Gables?
I don't know how many fountains there are, but like right there at Granada and Coral Way, there are 4 on each corner. So you find that a lot. And so Alan and I went out there and we set up our tripod. And Alan did such a great job mimicking my grandfather. Even the fingers are exactly correct. And that's the closest thing I can find to my grandmother's dress. I don't have a flower dress like that, but it's the style. And I held out my dress that way. And that was so much fun. So that's like my grandparents 100 years ago. They didn't know that their granddaughter will be living right up the street from where they posed that day.
And where did they live? Do you know that?
Well, their last house was on Osorio. What was the address on Osorio?
922.
922 Osorio.
And how far do you live from that? A mile?
I can walk there. Yeah.
From your grandparents' house?
Yeah.
Mm.
Wow. Very, very close. Yeah.
They
didn't live there the whole time, but that was their final house.
It's interesting. More things about Coral Gables is they have their own addresses. Dade County has almost every city follows the county except for Hialeah, Coral Gables. There's one or two other little cities. You guys, so when you drive through Coral Gables before MapQuest, you get lost. You know, all the names were changed.
Oh,
Right, they all have names.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. I remember moving out. My first job was in Salt Lake City, and the news director said, "You'll never get lost here. We're on a grid pattern." And a grid pattern. I looked at this grid, and he was right. Like, I could never get lost because it was a very strict grid pattern. And yet, I grew up in a city where, yes, we had Spanish names for all the streets. Anything but a grid pattern with the streets. We
And the way he designed it. I mean,
yeah, he designed it
George
that way.
Merritt was like, he was ahead of the time back then, but he decided to make the city beautiful.
Yes, he did.
Was that the motto right from the beginning?
I believe so.
It's
So.
incredible.
You know what's kind of funny is that the city was named Coral Gables. Correct me if I'm wrong, Mom, but it was named after the house, the Merrick House, right? When they had a party and they're trying to think of how to name the city, and it was the Coral Gables of the house, correct?
Mm-hmm, yeah.
Gables. But Solomon Merrick, his father, wanted to name it Guavonia.
Oh, I would like that name.
Guavonia, because they had a lot of guava on their farm.
Yes.
Can you imagine if we were celebrating 100 years of Guavonia?
Yeah, that'd be very funny. You know, people don't realize that South Florida, Dade County, was growing so much vegetables and so much fruit. You know, pineapple used to be real big down in South Dade in the 30s and 40s.
Yeah.
And then Gables had guava.
Gables had guava. So the Merrick family's farm was very prosperous. George Merrick was working that farm since he was 13 years old. And so George, by the time he was an adult, he could have lived a very leisurely life, very wealthy, just off of the produce that they produced. But he had this dream. You know, he was this dreamer, and he wanted to create something of lasting value in this way.
Oh, he did.
Yeah.
City of Coral Gables is thriving. Where can they buy tickets to this play?
Okay, there are two.
Can we put a stream on this?
So this is such an exciting thing. On the opening night, which is April 29th, which is the exact day of when the city of Coral Gables was incorporated, April 29th, 1925. So on April 29th, 2025, that is the opening night. And the Coral Gables Chamber of Commerce is using that night as well to celebrate its 100th anniversary. So, and Mark Trowbridge is in charge of this, and he's gone wild with it.
Yeah.
And so those tickets are purchased through the Chamber of Commerce's website.
But what's Eventbrite? Is Eventbrite you buy tickets? Where do you buy your tickets?
You buy tickets through the Coral Gables Chamber of Commerce. And I have a QR code that I should have given you as well, but it should be on there.
They go to coralgableschamber.com.
I can't believe I didn't bring that for you. But yeah, go to the Coral Gables Chamber of Commerce. And I'm going to put it, I have it all over my social media, and you'll be reading about it because Community Newspapers is going to put it.
Oh, yes, ma'am. Anything else?
Yeah. All the following information. So that night there's going to be a VIP cocktail party. There's going to be the show and then a panel discussion afterwards, because we can talk a little bit more about Miami history and Coral Gables history. And then a royal table on Miracle Mile. Half of Miracle Mile is going to be closed down for a royal table dinner. It's going to be a 1920s theme.
On Miracle Mile.
On Miracle Mile.
On the mile.
Yes,
on the
mile.
street.
How great is that?
It's going to be amazing.
I know you don't know who, but Ron Frazier, the famous UM baseball coach, would have fundraisers, big events on the baseball field. As soon as you said that, I thought of that. Right on Miracle Mile. That is pretty cool.
Yeah. And so that night's a very special night. It's a much more expensive night. Don't ask me the price. Look it up on the Coral Gables Chamber of Commerce website. And then the rest of the nights we have Wednesday night, which is April 30th, and then May 1st, May 2nd. All those shows are at 8 p.m. Those are single ticket sales, and then a matinee on Saturday on May 3rd. And those tickets you buy through Actors Playhouse. And there are group sales prices too. If you're 10 or more, it's 10% off. 15 people or more, 15% off. So, and then the matinee price is even lower than that. So there's a way for everyone to go.
Yeah.
And this is like, it's only once in 100 years, right? And it's a way to meet our city's founders, both of Miami Beach and Coral Gables, and to hear them speak and to plan the cities that we love and cherish today. It's never been done before.
Well, it's exciting because not everybody knows the history of Coral Gables. In the history of Coral Gables, everything grew around it. And if Coral Gables successful, everybody else is successful. So congratulations on that. Mayor, as always, is a pleasure.
Well, she is, as you know, she's the only female mayor in the city's 100-year history. Okay, so that's...
And is it true?
Oh.
This is Grant Miller here. Is it true? Or is it not true? Are you considering about running for mayor again?
Not running for mayor again. Never know what happens.
Yeah, good answer, Mayor. Listen,
I wanted to tell you that I'm so proud of June for having done this, not only for the city of Coral Gables, but for a legacy of our family. Because as was spoken before, the people from the people from the Midwest came down and developed all this land down here. And Carl Fisher, as mentioned before, who is the founder of Miami Beach, came from the same small town of Greensburg, Indiana, that her grandfather, Robert Thomson, came from. They lived in the same town, came from the same town. Imagine that in this country, of all the cities and places you could be, you could find this a developer of Carl Fisher, and then her grandfather being involved with George Merrick down here.
Yeah,
it's pretty exciting.
It is exciting.
Well, I wanted to say that I'm so proud of you, because what you've done here, you've etched your place in history, and having done such a wonderful thing for the city. And I've considered myself, fortunate to have lived in this city. It's a very conservative city, and for me to have even become a mayor, a female mayor in this wonderful city of University of Miami, and all that we have here, and I've sort of been a leader in that respect with women, especially in that, coming from a homemaker back in 1979 to doing other things, but now I'm to the point, and I'm so proud, because at the age of 92, I'm so proud, especially for this occasion, to be able to hand over. I want to hand over the leadership to my daughter.
Oh my God!
She's
Can
handing
you
her
spin
the
it?
baton. Yeah.
Can you spin it?
She does.
Holy cow! Former junior Orange Bowl queen.
Orange Bowl queen.
Orange Bowl queen.
This is too small. Yeah, but I used to twirl. I can't do it here. This is like for a tiny child.
It probably was yours when you were little. All right, we're excited. Greeting from Paradise, Actors Playhouse. Actors Playhouse has great history by itself.
Miracle Theater on Miracle Theater,
Mile. Sorry. It's Miracle Theater, but they call it Actors Playhouse.
Yeah.
But Miracle Theater, we went there as kids.
April 29th through May 3rd. Please come. It's going to be so much. It's going to be so much fun.